Wyoming Territory, 1875. The fierce wind howled like a wounded animal, driving snow horizontally across the darkening plains. Katherine Rose clutched her threadbare shawl tighter around her slender shoulders, knowing it provided little protection against the sudden early winter storm. At 22 years old, she stood alone on the porch of her small homestead, watching nature's fury with growing dread. 6 months a widow, 6 months since influenza had taken Daniel, leaving her with a struggling 10-acre farm, dwindling supplies, and a heart frozen in grief. Katherine tucked a strand of honey-blonde hair behind her ear and squinted through the swirling white. The cattle would be fine in the barn, but the roof had been leaking for weeks. Another repair she couldn't afford. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, the words immediately torn away by the wind. "You have to." That was the rule of the frontier: survive or perish. Katherine had seen too many women crumble under the weight of widowhood, returning east with dreams shattered. But the east held nothing for her now. This small plot of land near Sweetwater Creek was all she had left. Katherine believed with absolute certainty that a woman alone had no place in Wyoming Territory. The land demanded partnerships, husband and wife working together to scratch survival from the unforgiving soil. Alone, she was simply waiting for the inevitable defeat. Daniel had been her strength, her protection. Without him, she was merely postponing the inevitable. As darkness descended and the temperature plummeted, Katherine retreated inside the crude cabin, securing the door against the howling wind. The small stove provided meager warmth as she stirred a pot of thin stew, enough for tonight, perhaps tomorrow. Then what? Winter had come weeks earlier than expected, and her preserved stores wouldn't last until spring. A sudden pounding at the door made her jump, nearly spilling the precious stew. Katherine froze, her heart racing. No one should be traveling in this storm, and visitors were rare even in fair weather. The nearest neighbor was 5 miles away. The pounding came again, more insistent. "Hello. Anyone there?" A man's voice, barely audible above the storm. Katherine grabbed Daniel's old shotgun from beside the door, holding it ready as she called out, "Who's there?" "Name's Nathan O'Connor, ma'am. My horse threw a shoe about a mile back. I'm half frozen and could use shelter until this storm passes." Katherine hesitated. The frontier code demanded hospitality. To turn away a traveler in such weather was tantamount to murder. But a woman alone, another violent gust rattled the cabin's walls, making her decision. She couldn't condemn anyone to freeze to death. "I'm opening the door," she called. "I have a shotgun pointed at it." When she swung the door open, the wind nearly tore it from her grasp. Standing on her threshold was a man completely covered in snow, leading a magnificent black gelding by the reins. The horse's head was lowered against the storm, steam puffing from its nostrils. "Bring your horse to the barn," Katherine shouted over the wind, "then come back." 20 minutes later, Katherine watched warily as the stranger warmed his hands by her stove. His coat, now hanging near the fire, had clearly been expensive once, though now it was travel-worn. With the snow melted away, she could see he was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps 25, with a square jaw dusted with light stubble and striking blue eyes that assessed the cabin with careful attention. "I appreciate the shelter, Mrs. Rose, Katherine Rose." She kept the shotgun within reach, "and I've little choice but to offer it." A faint smile touched his lips. Still, not everyone would welcome a stranger in these parts. "I know what the storm can do," she gestured to the pot. "There's stew, though it's thin. Better than snow." He removed his gloves, revealing strong hands with unexpected calluses. Not a city man, despite the quality of his clothing. As Katherine ladled stew into a cracked bowl, she studied him cautiously. Nathan O'Connor had the easy confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed, yet there was something unassuming in his manner. His black hat, good quality Stetson, sat on her small table, and his dark hair curled slightly from the dampness. "You're far from anywhere," he observed, accepting the bowl with a nod of thanks. "Traveling alone." Katherine stiffened. "This is my home." His eyebrows rose slightly. "You're here alone." "My husband died last spring." She kept her voice flat, emotionless. "Influenza." Nathan's expression sobered immediately. "My condolences, Mrs. Rose." "Katherine," she corrected automatically. "Mrs. Rose was my mother-in-law." They ate in silence, the howling wind and crackling fire the only sounds. Katherine noticed how carefully Nathan ate, savoring each bite of the meager stew as if it were a feast. When he finished, he insisted on washing his own bowl, a small courtesy that surprised her. "I can sleep in the barn with my horse," he offered, glancing at the cabin's single room with its narrow bed. "Nonsense, you'll freeze. I have blankets you can use by the fire." Katherine wasn't foolish enough to turn her back on a stranger, but neither could she send him to the drafty barn. The storm might last days by the sound of it. Nathan studied her face. "You're not afraid having a stranger in your home?" Katherine's hand drifted to the shotgun. "I know how to use this. My husband made sure of that." A genuine smile spread across his face. "Smart man, your husband." That night Katherine slept fitfully in her bed, the shotgun beside her, while Nathan made a pallet near the stove. The storm showed no signs of abating, howling around the cabin like a pack of wolves. Occasionally she would open her eyes to find him adding wood to the fire, his movements quiet and considerate. By morning, snowdrifts reached halfway up the windows. Katherine rose early, as was her habit, to find Nathan already awake, examining a leak in the corner of the roof where snow had begun to melt through. "Your cabin needs work before the full winter hits," he said without preamble. "I'm aware," Katherine replied stiffly, embarrassed by the obvious disrepair. "I haven't had time or resources to fix everything." Nathan nodded, seeming to understand what she wasn't saying. "I'm handy with repairs, least I could do for your hospitality." Katherine wanted to refuse, pride demanded it, but practicality won out. "The storm may keep you here for days." "I won't accept charity, but I could use the help." Over a breakfast of cornmeal mush, they planned the day. Despite the blizzard, there were tasks that couldn't wait: animals to feed, water to haul, repairs to begin inside the cabin. Katherine was surprised when Nathan rolled up his sleeves and asked where she kept her tools. "Most men passing through wouldn't bother," she remarked as she showed him Daniel's old toolbox. "I'm not most men," his smile was brief but warm, "and I pay my debts." For 3 days the storm raged outside while inside the cabin, an unexpected rhythm developed. Katherine cooked and mended while Nathan repaired the roof leak, fixed the loose floorboards, and reinforced the door that had been warping. They worked mostly in silence, but it was surprisingly comfortable, like a dance where each knew their steps. On the evening of the 3rd day, as they sat by the fire drinking the last of her coffee, Katherine found herself studying him openly. There was something about Nathan O'Connor that didn't quite fit. His hands were calloused like a working man's, but his speech was educated. He knew ranching and repairs, yet carried himself with an authority that suggested more. "Where were you headed before the storm?" she finally asked. Nathan looked up from cleaning her husband's old tools. "Medicine Bow, I have business there." "What kind of business?" His blue eyes met hers, measuring. "Land, cattle. The usual in these parts." "You're a rancher, then?" "Among other things," he set the tools aside. "What about you, Katherine? What will you do here alone?" The question struck at her deepest fear, one she'd avoided confronting directly. "I don't know," she admitted, the words painful. "Daniel and I had plans. We were going to expand, maybe get a few more cattle in the spring." She gestured around the small cabin. "Now I'm just trying to survive the winter." "It's hard country for anyone alone," Nathan observed quietly. "Impossible, you mean?" Katherine's voice held an edge of bitterness. "Everyone in town is just waiting for me to fail, to pack up and leave. Frontier widows are a burden on the community, that's what they think. Just another mouth to feed when crops fail." "Is that what you believe? That you can't make it?" Katherine stared into the fire. "I believe this land breaks people who stand alone. That's why settlers come as families, as communities. The ones who survive out here have someone to lean on." The silence stretched between them, filled with the popping of the fire and the muffled howl of the diminishing storm. When Katherine looked up, she found Nathan watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Sometimes strength comes from unexpected places," he said finally. The 4th morning dawned clear and blindingly bright, the storm finally spent. Katherine opened the door to a transformed world, everything buried under 3 feet of pristine snow, the landscape redrawn in dazzling white. The air was so cold it hurt to breathe, but the sky stretched endlessly blue above. Nathan stood beside her on the porch, his breath forming clouds. "Beautiful and deadly," he remarked. "Like most things worth having out here." He spent the morning digging paths to the barn and well, while Katherine took stock of their supplies. The picture was grim: flour running low, coffee gone, meat dwindling. She had preserved vegetables that might last another month if stretched carefully. When Nathan returned, stomping snow from his boots, Katherine faced him with forced practicality. The path to town should be passable in a day or two. You'll be able to continue your journey. He studied her face. And you, how long will your supplies hold? Long enough, she lied. Nathan said nothing, but later that afternoon, she found him in the barn, cleaning his rifle, an expensive Winchester repeater that confirmed her suspicions about his status. This was no ordinary cowhand. Thought I might hunt before I leave, he explained when he caught her looking. Plenty of tracks in the snow, deer moving down from the high country after the storm. You don't need to. I want to, he interrupted gently. Consider it payment for your hospitality. The next day, Nathan returned with a young buck slung across his shoulders. Katherine watched in astonishment as he efficiently field-dressed it in her barn, explaining each step as he worked. She had watched Daniel do this many times, but had never learned the skill herself. A woman on her own should know how to hunt, Nathan said matter-of-factly. Next time you'll come with me. The presumption that there would be a next time hung in the air between them. Katherine said nothing, but something warm unfurled in her chest, something she quickly suppressed. Nathan would leave. Everyone left, one way or another. That evening, with fresh venison sizzling in her cast-iron pan and the cabin warmer than it had been in months thanks to Nathan's repairs, Katherine found herself laughing at his story about a cattle drive gone wrong. The sound startled her. She couldn't remember the last time she had laughed. Nathan looked equally surprised, then pleased. You have a beautiful laugh, he said simply. Katherine felt her cheeks warm. It's just been a while. His eyes held hers for a long moment. Too long, I'd say. After dinner, as they sat by the fire, Nathan pulled a small leather-bound book from his saddlebag. Do you like poetry, Katherine? She blinked in surprise. Poetry. He opened the book. My mother insisted I take this when I left Boston, said the West would try to strip the civilization from me. A wry smile touched his lips. She wasn't entirely wrong. You're from Boston. Katherine tried to imagine this capable, rugged man navigating Eastern drawing rooms. Born there, left when I was 19. He found his page and began to read aloud Tennyson's Ulysses, his voice giving new meaning to words Katherine had only ever seen on a page. As the evening deepened and the venison stew warmed their bellies, something shifted between them. Stories flowed more freely. Katherine found herself speaking of her childhood in Missouri, her journey west with Daniel 5 years earlier, their dreams for the homestead. Nathan spoke of Boston, his education, his decision to seek fortune in the West rather than follow his father into banking. I wanted to build something with my own hands, he explained. Not just shuffle papers and count other men's money. And have you built something? Katherine asked. A shadow crossed his face. I've tried, still trying. By the 6th day, the snow had compacted enough for safe travel. The morning dawned with the knowledge that Nathan would leave, continuing to medicine Bo as planned. Katherine felt a hollow opening inside her chest, a feeling she refused to name. As Nathan saddled his horse, he turned to her with uncharacteristic hesitation. I'll be back this way in about 2 weeks. Would it be presumptuous to call on you? Katherine's heart stuttered. Why would you want to? Because in 6 days, I've felt more at home in your cabin than anywhere I've been in years, he answered with disarming honesty. And because I think you could use a friend out here. Friend. The word felt simultaneously insufficient and overwhelming. I suppose the frontier code of hospitality would require me to welcome you, she said carefully. A smile tugged at his lips. Is that a yes, Katherine Rose? It's not a no, Nathan O'Connor. He mounted his magnificent black gelding, settling into the saddle with the ease of a man born to it. 2 weeks, he promised. And I'll bring coffee. Katherine stood on her porch, watching until horse and rider disappeared beyond the snow-covered rise. Only then did she allow herself to acknowledge the feeling that had been growing inside her, hope, fragile as a winter sparrow. True to his word, Nathan returned exactly 2 weeks later, his saddlebags laden with supplies, coffee, sugar, ammunition for her shotgun, even a small bag of peppermint candies that made Katherine's eyes widen with childlike delight. He stayed only for dinner, but before he left, he asked permission to call again. Thus began a pattern. Every 2 weeks, Nathan would appear, sometimes staying overnight if weather threatened, other times just for a meal. Each visit brought small gifts, practical things mostly, though occasionally something frivolous that showed he was paying attention. a ribbon that matched her eyes, a new book of poetry, seeds for her spring garden. With each visit, Katherine felt the ice around her heart thawing incrementally. She began to look forward to his arrivals, to plan for them, setting aside stories to share or questions to ask. Nathan never pushed for more than she offered, content with their slow-building friendship. Winter deepened, brutal in its intensity. February brought storms that isolated Katherine for weeks at a time. During one particularly vicious blizzard, she feared Nathan wouldn't make his promised visit and was shocked by how the thought hollowed her out. When he appeared through the swirling snow 3 days later than expected, Katherine nearly wept with relief. His face was wind-burned, his clothing crusted with ice. "You shouldn't have come in this weather," she scolded, even as she hurried to help him with his frozen coat. "It's too dangerous." "I promised," he said simply, as if that explained everything. That night, as the wind screamed around the cabin, Katherine finally asked the question that had been nagging her. "Why do you keep coming back, Nathan? Surely you have better things to do than visit a struggling widow." Nathan set down his coffee cup, regarding her seriously. "Do you want the truth, Katherine?" She nodded, suddenly nervous. "Because when I'm with you, I remember who I wanted to be when I first came west." His voice was quiet but certain. "Not what I've become, but what I hope to be." "And what have you become?" she whispered. Pain flickered across his face, something harder, something colder. He looked down at his hands. "This country changes a man." "Yes," Katherine agreed softly. "It changes everyone." By March, the worst of winter was releasing its grip. The snow began to recede, revealing patches of muddy ground beneath. Katherine's thoughts turned to spring planting, to the daunting task of managing the farm alone. The winter had been survivable largely due to Nathan's regular visits and assistance, but spring would bring new challenges. On the first truly warm day, Nathan arrived with 2 surprises: a packet of wildflower seeds to brighten your dooryard and news. "I've bought the old Miller place," he announced as they walked the perimeter of her property, assessing winter damage, just over the ridge there. Katherine stopped in her tracks, staring at him. "The Miller place. But that's enormous, 500 acres at least." 640, a full section. Nathan's expression was carefully neutral. "I've been looking for the right property for some time. But it's been abandoned for years. The house is nearly collapsed." "I'll rebuild," he glanced at her. "I'm good with repairs, remember." Katherine felt a confusing mix of emotions, pleasure at having Nathan as a neighbor and an inexplicable sense of loss. Their relationship had existed in a strange, suspended state. What would happen when he was established nearby, no longer a visitor but a permanent fixture? "You'll be busy," she said finally. "A property that size requires considerable work." "I'll manage," he hesitated, then added, "though I'd still like to call on you if that's acceptable." Katherine found herself nodding. "I'd like that." Spring arrived in earnest, bringing with it an explosion of work. Katherine rose before dawn each day, working until she collapsed into bed at night. The garden needed planting, fences required mending, and her small herd of cattle had to be moved to fresh pasture. She saw less of Nathan, though he still appeared every week or so, often just long enough to help with a difficult task before returning to his own property. Through snippets of conversation, Katherine learned he had hired men working on the Miller place, rebuilding the house and outbuildings. Occasionally she heard hammering echoing across the valley, or saw dust rising from wagons delivering lumber. One evening in late April, Nathan arrived at sunset, looking more tired than she had ever seen him. Katherine was immediately concerned. "What's wrong? Has something happened?" "Nothing wrong," he assured her. "Just been pushing hard to get the house habitable before the cattle drive." Cattle drive, this was the first she had heard of it. Nathan nodded, accepting the cup of coffee she offered. "I've got 2,000 head coming up from Colorado. They'll arrive mid-May." Katherine nearly dropped the coffee pot. 2,000, Nathan, that's a start," he finished with a small smile. "The rangeland here can support twice that." For the first time, Katherine began to understand the scale of Nathan's operation. This was no small rancher establishing himself. This was something much larger. Questions crowded her mind, but before she could voice them, Nathan spoke again. "I have a proposition for you, Katherine." She sat down slowly, setting her own coffee aside. "What kind of proposition?" "Your 10 acres are completely surrounded by my property now." When she frowned, he hastened to add, I'm not looking to buy you out, just the opposite. I'd like to offer you a partnership of sorts. Partnership, the word felt strange on her tongue. Nathan leaned forward, his blue eyes intent. Your land has the best water access in the valley. I need that for my cattle. In exchange for water rights, I'll provide you with manpower, help with your garden, your herd repairs, whatever you need. Katherine considered his words carefully. The arrangement made practical sense. Alone, she would struggle to manage even her small operation. With help, she might actually prosper. This would be a formal agreement, she asked, written down. Nathan nodded approvingly. Absolutely, legally binding. Your land remains yours entirely. I'm just proposing a mutually beneficial arrangement between neighbors. I need to think about it, Katherine said finally. This isn't a decision to make lightly. Of course, Nathan rose to leave. Take all the time you need. As spring advanced, Katherine watched with fascination as the Miller place transformed. The dilapidated house was demolished completely, replaced by a substantial two-story structure. Barns and corrals sprang up almost overnight. Men on horseback patrolled the perimeter, stringing new barbed wire fencing. Nathan continued to visit, though less frequently as his project consumed his time. During one visit, he invited Katherine to ride over and see the progress. Curiosity won out over hesitation, and she agreed. The scale of development stunned her. The house was far grander than she had imagined, not ostentatious, but solid and well-designed, with a wide porch wrapping around three sides and large windows to capture the valley views. Inside, the rooms were spacious and thoughtfully arranged, though still unfurnished. It's beautiful, Katherine admitted, running her hand along a polished banister. You've accomplished so much in such a short time. Money can buy efficiency, Nathan replied with a shrug that seemed almost apologetic. A discomforting thought struck Katherine. Nathan, how wealthy are you exactly? He looked away, focusing on the empty hearth. Wealthy enough to build what I want here. Before she could press further, they were interrupted by a foreman needing Nathan's attention. The moment passed, but Katherine's questions multiplied. That night she lay awake long after returning home, turning Nathan's partnership proposal over in her mind. It made practical sense, yet something held her back, perhaps the growing awareness that Nathan O'Connor was not simply the helpful stranger the storm had brought to her door. He was something more, something she didn't fully understand. May arrived with its characteristic unpredictability, glorious sunshine one day, drenching rain the next. Katherine finally made her decision and rode to the Miller place, the O'Connor ranch now, she supposed, to give Nathan her answer. She found him in one of the newly constructed corrals, working with a spirited bay mare. Katherine watched from the fence as he moved with quiet confidence, gentling the nervous animal with soft words and a steady hand. There was something mesmerizing about seeing this side of him, patient, calm, utterly in command. When he spotted her, his face lit with genuine pleasure. Katherine, I didn't expect you today. I've made my decision, she said without preamble, about your proposal. Nathan handed the mare's lead to a nearby ranch hand and joined her at the fence, wiping his hands on a bandana. And I accept with conditions. Katherine straightened her shoulders. I want quarterly reviews of the arrangement. Either of us can dissolve the partnership with 30 days' notice. And I want it understood that I'll continue to work my own land. I'm not looking for charity. Nathan's expression was one of respect mingled with amusement. You'd make a formidable business negotiator, Katherine Rose. I'm simply protecting my interests. As you should, he extended his hand. Partners, then. Katherine hesitated only briefly before clasping his hand. His grip was warm and firm, and the contact sent an unexpected shiver through her. Partners, she agreed. 3 days later, the cattle drive arrived. Katherine stood on her porch, watching in awe as an endless stream of longhorns flowed over the ridge and into the valley. Cowboys on lathered horses whooped and called, directing the massive herd toward the newly constructed corrals and pastures. In the midst of it all rode Nathan, issuing commands with the easy authority of a man accustomed to being obeyed. He spotted Katherine watching and detoured toward her cabin, his horse picking its way through the muddy yard. Quite a sight, isn't it? He called, grinning broadly. Katherine had never seen him so animated, so alive. It's incredible, she admitted. I've never seen so many cattle in one place. This is just the beginning. Nathan's eyes shone with pride and excitement. By next year, we'll have twice this number. The word slipped out before Katherine could stop it. Nathan's smile softened. Figure of speech, though your water rights are making this possible. Before Katherine could respond, a cowboy galloped up, calling urgently for Nathan's attention. With a tip of his hat he was gone, riding back into the controlled chaos of the drive. That evening, as the sun set and the dust settled, a knock came at Katherine's door. She opened it to find Nathan standing there, exhausted but exhilarated. "I know it's late," he apologized, "but I wanted to bring you something." He held out a small leather pouch. Inside, Katherine found 20 gold double eagles, $400 in total. She looked up in shock. "The first payment for water rights," Nathan explained, "as per our agreement." Katherine stared at the coins. It was more money than she had seen since Daniel's death, enough to buy a new plow, seeds for next year, maybe even hire help for the harvest. "This is too much," she protested. "It's fair market value, I had it assessed." Nathan's expression turned serious. "I don't want your charity either, Katherine, this is business." She closed her hand around the pouch, nodding slowly. "Thank you." "There's something else." Nathan shifted his weight, suddenly appearing almost nervous. "We're having a small celebration tomorrow night for the successful drive. I'd be honored if you would attend." "A celebration? Nothing fancy." "Just a dinner at the ranch house with the trail boss and a few of the men." His eyes met hers. "And it would give me a chance to introduce you properly, as my partner." Partner, there was that word again, with all its ambiguous potential. "I'd like that," Katherine found herself saying. "What time shall I come?" The next evening, Katherine dressed with more care than she had in months. Her wardrobe offered few options. The black morning dress she had worn for Daniel was finally set aside, replaced by her only other good dress, a modest blue cotton that brought out the color of her eyes. She pinned her honey blonde hair up carefully, securing it with her mother's silver combs. As she rode toward the O'Connor ranch in the fading light, Katherine felt a strange mixture of anticipation and anxiety. This would be her first social gathering since Daniel's death, her first step back into the world in some ways. The ranch house blazed with light, lanterns hanging from the porch railings and warmth spilling from every window. Men's laughter drifted through the evening air, along with the smell of roasting meat. Katherine hesitated at the hitching post, suddenly uncertain. Then the front door opened, and Nathan appeared, silhouetted against the light. He spotted her immediately and came down the steps. "You came," he said simply, as if he had doubted she would. "I said I would." Katherine allowed him to help her dismount, acutely aware of his hands at her waist. "You look beautiful," Nathan said quietly. Then, seeming to catch himself, he added more formally, "Everyone's inside. Let me introduce you." The evening passed in a blur for Katherine. The ranch house, though not fully furnished, was impressive inside, spacious rooms with high ceilings, quality woodwork, even a piano in the corner of the parlor. The dinner was lavish by frontier standards: roast beef, potatoes, fresh bread, even a blackberry cobbler for dessert. But what struck Katherine most was how Nathan was treated. The trail boss and cowboys showed him a deference that went beyond employer-employee relations. They spoke to him with respect bordering on reverence, hanging on his words, laughing at his jokes. When he introduced Katherine as my partner from the neighboring homestead, their curious glances made her flush. After dinner, one of the cowhands brought out a fiddle, and impromptu dancing began in the cleared dining room. Katherine hung back, watching as the men demonstrated surprisingly graceful steps despite their boots and spurs. "May I have this dance?" Nathan appeared at her elbow, extending his hand. Katherine shook her head. "I haven't danced since." She couldn't finish the sentence. "Since Daniel," he completed gently. "I understand, but perhaps it's time to remember that life continues, Katherine." Something in his steady gaze gave her courage. She placed her hand in his, allowing him to lead her into the center of the room. The fiddle player struck up a waltz, and Nathan's arm slipped around her waist. "I warn you, I'm out of practice," she murmured. "You're doing fine," he assured her, guiding her through the steps with surprising grace for a rancher. As they moved together, Katherine became aware of the other men watching them, exchanging knowing glances. An uncomfortable suspicion formed in her mind. Later, as Nathan walked her to her horse under a sky scattered with stars, Katherine gathered her courage. "Nathan, why do your men look at you that way, with such deference?" He stilled, his expression unreadable in the darkness. "They're my employees. I treat them well, pay them fairly." "It's more than that," Katherine persisted. "Even the trail boss defers to you as if." As if you're someone important. Nathan sighed, running a hand through his hair. I've built something substantial here, Katherine. People respect that. How substantial? She pressed. I need to know who I've partnered with. A long silence stretched between them. Finally, Nathan spoke, his voice low. I own several ranches across Wyoming Territory. This is just the newest. Katherine felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. Several. 3 others. And mining interests near Laramie. He hesitated, then added, I came west with nothing but education and ambition, Katherine. Everything I have, I've built over the past 6 years. You own half the county, she whispered, the realization dawning. That's why everyone treats you like royalty. Nathan reached for her hand, but Katherine stepped back. Why didn't you tell me? Would it have mattered that first night when you took in a half-frozen stranger? He asked quietly. Of course not, but after. After I wanted you to know me, not my holdings. His voice held an edge of frustration. Out here, wealth changes how people see you. Suddenly, every action has ulterior motives assigned to it. Katherine's mind raced, revisiting every interaction, every gift, every offer of help, like your partnership proposal. Was that just a way to... To what? Nathan interrupted, his voice sharp now. To help a neighbor I've come to care for, to ensure you don't lose everything you and your husband worked for. Yes, I could have simply bought your land for 10 times its value, but I knew you wouldn't accept that. So instead you crafted this partnership. The word felt hollow now. Because I respect you, Nathan insisted. Because I admired how fiercely you fought to hold on to your independence, even when it was killing you by inches. Katherine flinched at the accuracy of his assessment. I should go, she said stiffly. Katherine, please. I need time to think, Nathan. She mounted her horse without his assistance. Good night. As she rode home under the vast Wyoming sky, Katherine's thoughts churned. Nathan O'Connor wasn't simply a neighborly rancher. He was a man of substantial means and influence, someone who could have bought her entire homestead without blinking. Had everything, his visits, his help, the partnership, been merely the actions of a wealthy man amusing himself with charity. The thought stung more than she expected. Somewhere along the way, Nathan had become important to her, more than important. The realization sent a shock through her system. For a week, Katherine avoided the O'Connor ranch, throwing herself into work on her own property. The partnership agreement sat unsigned on her small table, a constant reminder of her indecision. Then came the letter from the bank in Medicine Bow. Katherine read it 3 times, her hands shaking. The mortgage Daniel had taken out on their land, a loan she hadn't even known existed, was being called due. $300 payable within 30 days or foreclosure proceedings would begin. The gold coins Nathan had given her for the water rights would cover most of it, but not all, and using that money would leave her nothing for seed, for repairs, for survival. Pride warred with necessity as Katherine sat at her table, staring at the foreclosure notice. She had 3 options: sell to Nathan, accept his partnership, and hope the payments would sustain her, or lose everything. A knock at her door startled her from her thoughts. Katherine hastily wiped tears from her cheeks before opening it. Nathan stood on her porch, his expression a mixture of concern and determination. You've been avoiding me, he said without preamble. I've been busy. Katherine, just her name, but filled with so much meaning. She sighed, stepping back to let him enter. Nathan's gaze immediately went to the letter on the table, his brow furrowing as he recognized the bank's letterhead. Bad news. Katherine hesitated, then decided honesty was the only path forward. The bank is calling in the mortgage. I have 30 days to pay or lose the farm. Nathan picked up the letter, scanning its contents. His face darkened. Jameson, I might have known. You know the banker. I know his type. Nathan set the letter down carefully. How much do you need? I won't take your money, Katherine said sharply, not as a gift. I wasn't offering charity. Nathan's blue eyes held hers steadily. I was thinking of an advance on our partnership agreement. If you still want to be partners, that is. Katherine studied his face, searching for pity or condescension. She found only straightforward concern. Why is this partnership so important to you? She asked finally. You could buy this land outright. You probably own the bank that's threatening to take it. I don't actually, though I could. Nathan took a deep breath, The truth is, the partnership is just an excuse, Katherine. An excuse for what? To see you. To be near you. The admission seemed to cost him something. I've been looking for reasons to come back since that first storm. The Miller place, the cattle drive, the water rights, they're all secondary. Katherine felt her heart beating in her throat. Why? Because from the moment you opened your door to a half-frozen stranger, I've been falling in love with you. Nathan's voice was rough with emotion. Your strength, your pride, your determination to stand alone even when it's killing you, everything about you calls to me. The confession hung in the air between them, changing everything and nothing all at once. Katherine realized that part of her had known, had felt the same pull. I'm not looking to buy you or your land, Katherine, Nathan continued when she remained silent. I'm looking for a true partnership. In every sense of the word. Katherine's mind whirled with conflicting emotions, fear, hope, longing. I can't be another possession, Nathan, another acquisition. Is that what you think I want? Hurt flashed across his face. If all I wanted was ownership, I could have let the bank foreclose and bought your land at auction. I could have had a dozen women happy to marry Nathan O'Connor, cattle baron. The blunt assessment startled a laugh from Katherine. Cattle baron. A rueful smile touched his lips. That's what they call me in Cheyenne, it's ridiculous. But accurate, apparently. Katherine shook her head, trying to reconcile the man before her, the one who had fixed her roof and read poetry by firelight, with the wealthy landowner he described. Katherine, Nathan stepped closer, not touching her but near enough that she could feel his warmth. I'm still the same man who stumbled to your door half frozen. Who repaired your roof, who hunted for your table. My bank account doesn't change who I am. Doesn't it? She whispered. Wealth changes everything. Only if we let it. He reached for her hand, holding it gently between his own. I'm asking for a chance, Katherine, not as Nathan O'Connor, cattle baron, but as the man who's been visiting you for months. The man who loves your laugh and the way you stand up for yourself even when you're terrified. Katherine looked down at their joined hands. I'm afraid, she admitted. Of what? Of trusting, of believing in something again, only to lose it. Her voice caught. I survived losing Daniel, but just barely. I don't know if I could survive losing. She stopped herself, but Nathan finished the thought. Losing me. Katherine nodded mutely. I can't promise nothing will ever happen to me, Nathan said quietly. No one can promise that, but I can promise that while I live, I'll do everything in my power to be worthy of your trust. To be a true partner. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. Think about it. The offer stands, both the business partnership and, he paused, the other kind. After he left, Katherine stood on her porch, watching him ride toward his ranch. The cattle baron, the stranger in the storm, the man who had gradually become essential to her life, all the same person. How had she not seen it? That night, Katherine made her decision. She rode to the O'Connor ranch at dawn, finding Nathan already at work in one of the corrals, breaking a spirited colt. He saw her approach and handed the reins to a ranch hand, coming to meet her at the fence. Katherine, I didn't expect you so early. She dismounted, her resolve firm despite her racing heart. I've been thinking about your offers. Both of them. Nathan's expression gave nothing away, and the partnership agreement is sound business, she said carefully. I'd be a fool to reject it, especially with the mortgage coming due. And the other offer, his voice was deliberately neutral. Katherine took a deep breath. That requires more exploration. A spark lit in Nathan's eyes. Exploration. I'm not ready to declare love, she clarified, but I am willing to see where this leads, she gestured between them, whatever this is. The smile that spread across Nathan's face made him look younger, more like the man who had first appeared at her door. I can work with that. There are conditions, Katherine added quickly. I won't be kept, I won't be owned. I remain my own woman with my own property and my own decisions. I wouldn't have it any other way. Nathan reached out, tentatively taking her hand. Partners in the true sense of the word. Partners, Katherine agreed, feeling something long dormant unfurl in her chest. Not quite hope, not quite love, but the possibility of both. Over the next month, their partnership took shape in both senses. The business agreement was formalized, with Nathan advancing enough money to pay off the bank and Katherine maintaining full ownership of her land. Ranch hands from the O'Connor property helped with her spring planting and fence mending, while Katherine offered her knowledge of local growing conditions and weather patterns. The personal side developed more cautiously. Nathan called on Katherine properly now, bringing small gifts and taking her on rides across the expanding ranch. They attended church together in the small town of Sweetwater, raising eyebrows and starting inevitable gossip. Katherine found herself watching Nathan in different settings, negotiating with merchants, instructing his cowboys, handling difficult animals, and admiring the different facets of his character. He was firm but fair with his men, generous without being showy, and possessed a dry wit that frequently caught her by surprise. For his part, Nathan seemed content to let Katherine set the pace of their relationship, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. He listened when she spoke of Daniel, offering quiet understanding rather than jealousy. He shared stories of his own life, his privileged upbringing in Boston, his decision to forge his own path out west, the failures and successes that had built his fortune. By June, Katherine realized with some surprise that she was happy, truly happy, for the first time since Daniel's death. Her farm was thriving with the additional help, her financial worries had eased, and she found herself looking forward to Nathan's visits with an anticipation that sometimes frightened her with its intensity. One warm evening, they sat on her porch watching the sunset paint the valley in gold and crimson. Nathan's arm rested comfortably around her shoulders, a relatively new development that Katherine found she enjoyed immensely. "I'm heading to Cheyenne next week," he said casually. "Business meetings. I'll be gone about 10 days. Katherine felt an unexpected pang at the news. So long. Nathan glanced down at her, a small smile playing at his lips. "Will you miss me, Katherine Rose?" "Perhaps," she admitted, feeling her cheeks warm. "The ranch hands might slack off without your supervision." "Is that your only concern, the quality of fence repairs?" His voice held gentle teasing. Katherine turned to face him fully. "No," she said honestly, "that's not my only concern." Something shifted in Nathan's expression, a softening and intensity. Slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, he leaned down and brushed his lips against hers. The kiss was gentle, questioning, over almost before it began. Katherine blinked up at him, her heart racing. "Oh," she breathed. "I've wanted to do that for months," Nathan confessed, his voice rough. Instead of answering, Katherine reached up and drew his head down to hers again. This second kiss was different, deeper, more certain. His arms came around her waist, pulling her closer as the last light faded from the sky. When they finally broke apart, both breathing faster, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Katherine, I have almost from the beginning." The words sent a shock through her system, joy mixed with lingering fear. "I care for you deeply," she whispered, "more than I thought possible. But I'm still afraid." "Of what?" "Of depending on someone again, of building a life with someone only to have it torn away." She pulled back slightly to look into his eyes. "Of loving completely and losing completely." Nathan brushed a strand of hair from her face. "That's the risk of living, Katherine, of loving. There are no guarantees." "I know," she sighed, leaning into his touch. "I just need a little more time." "You have it," he promised, "all the time you need." Nathan's trip to Cheyenne proved more illuminating than Katherine had anticipated. In his absence, she was surprised by how frequently his name came up in town. At the general store, the proprietor asked if the Baron would be expanding his cattle operation further. At church, women who had barely acknowledged Katherine's existence suddenly sought her company, asking pointed questions about her friendship with Mr. O'Connor. Most revealing was her conversation with Sheriff Taylor, who stopped by her farm ostensibly to warn about cattle rustlers in the area. "O'Connor's put out word that your property is under his protection," the sheriff mentioned casually. "Not that anyone would bother a widow's small spread otherwise, but now that you're associated with him." "Associated," Katherine repeated, her eyebrows rising. Sheriff Taylor had the grace to look embarrassed. "Well, there's talk, Mrs. Rose, you understand. Man like O'Connor showing particular interest in a neighbor, people notice." "People should mind their own business," Katherine replied tartly. The sheriff chuckled. "In a small town, that'll be the day." His expression grew more serious. "He's a good man, O'Connor. Did you know he built the new schoolhouse in Medicine Bow? Paid for a teacher's salary for 2 years, too. Doesn't advertise his charity, but it's substantial." This was news to Katherine. No, I didn't know. Helped the Wilsons rebuild after that fire last year, too. Sent men and materials, wouldn't take a penny in return, the sheriff shrugged. Like I said, good man, this county's lucky to have him investing here. As the sheriff rode away, Katherine found herself pondering this new information. Nathan had never mentioned these charitable works, yet they aligned with the character of the man she had come to know, generous but without fanfare, compassionate without seeking credit. When Nathan returned from Cheyenne, he brought news that would change everything. The railroad's coming, he announced as they rode across the eastern section of his property. The Union Pacific is extending a spur line from Medicine Bow to the mining operations near Shirley Basin. It will cut right through this valley. Katherine reined in her horse, staring at him. When? Construction begins next spring. They'll be buying right-of-way from landowners over the next few months. Nathan's expression was carefully neutral. Including from you, Katherine. From me, she frowned. The railroad wants my land. Not all of it, just the southern corner where the creek bends. It's the most direct route through the valley. Nathan hesitated. They'll pay well above market value. Katherine's mind raced. A railroad would change everything, bringing more settlers, increasing land values, providing easier access to markets. How much of your land will they take? She asked. About 100 acres. I've already agreed to sell it to them. Nathan's eyes met hers. But I made your portion of the right-of-way a separate negotiation. It's your decision, Katherine, your land. The respect implicit in that decision touched Katherine deeply. Many men, especially wealthy, influential men, would have negotiated on her behalf without consultation, assuming they knew best. Thank you, she said simply, for letting it be my choice. Nathan smiled. Partnership, remember, equal voices. The railroad negotiations proceeded quickly. Katherine, with Nathan's advice but not his intervention, secured an excellent price for her small section of right-of-way. The money would be enough to expand her house, build a proper barn, and still have savings for the future. As summer reached its peak, bringing long, golden evenings and spectacular thunderstorms rolling across the plains, Katherine found herself at a crossroads. Her feelings for Nathan had deepened into something she could no longer deny, yet taking the final step, admitting love, considering a future together, still frightened her. The turning point came unexpectedly. A late July thunderstorm caught Katherine returning from town, the sudden violence of wind and rain forcing her to seek shelter in an abandoned shack halfway between town and her farm. Soaked and shivering, she managed to light the small stove and was attempting to dry her clothing when the door burst open. Nathan stood there, rain dripping from his hat, his expression transforming from worry to profound relief when he saw her. Thank God, he breathed, crossing the small space in 2 strides and pulling her into his arms. When your horse came back to the ranch without you, I thought. He broke off, holding her tightly as if afraid she might vanish. Katherine, stunned by the raw emotion in his voice, pulled back enough to see his face. You came looking for me in this storm. Of course I did. The answer was simple, absolute. I'd tear apart the whole territory if I had to. In that moment, staring into Nathan's rain-streaked face, Katherine finally acknowledged the truth she had been avoiding. She loved this man, completely, irrevocably, with all the terror and joy that entailed. Nathan, she whispered, reaching up to touch his face, I love you. Something broke open in his expression, a vulnerability, a wonder. Say it again, he requested hoarsely. I love you. The words were easier the second time, more certain. I'm still afraid, but I love you. Nathan's kiss was fierce, desperate, as if the admission had unlocked something primal in him. Katherine responded with equal fervor, months of restrained emotion flooding through her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. Marry me, he said simply. Katherine stepped back slightly, needing to see his eyes. Are you certain? A widow with a small farm hardly seems a suitable match for the cattle baron of Wyoming Territory. To hell with suitable, Nathan's gaze was unwavering. I want you, Katherine Rose. Not for your land or your water rights or any practical consideration. I want your courage and your stubbornness and your laugh that I had to work so hard to earn. He took her hands in his. I have wealth, yes. It can give us a comfortable life, opportunities for the future, but what I want most is a true partner to share it with, someone who sees me, not my holdings, someone who would have taken me in even if I'd been a penniless drifter in that storm. The truth of his words resonated in Katherine's heart. She had fallen in love with the man, not his position or possessions. "Yes," she said softly, then with more certainty, "yes, I'll marry you, Nathan O'Connor." The joy that transformed his face was answer enough to any lingering doubts. They were married in early September, as the first hint of autumn touched the aspen trees with gold. The ceremony took place at the O'Connor Ranch, with half the county in attendance, a far larger event than Katherine had envisioned, but one that Nathan insisted on. "I want everyone to witness my good fortune," he explained when she expressed concern about the growing guest list. "To see that Katherine Rose chose me." Nathan O'Connor, cattle baron, concerned with appearances, she teased, adjusting his tie as they prepared to greet yet another well-wisher. Nathan O'Connor, luckiest man in Wyoming Territory, concerned with honoring his bride properly, he corrected, capturing her hand and bringing it to his lips. After the wedding, they embarked on an extended honeymoon, first to San Francisco, where the luxury of the Palace Hotel left Katherine wide-eyed, then to Boston, where Nathan introduced her to his surprised but welcoming family. "You've changed him," Nathan's mother confided during a quiet moment. "His letters have been different this past year, happier, more settled." "He's changed me too," Katherine admitted. "Given me back hope when I thought it was gone forever." When they returned to Wyoming in late October, snow was already dusting the higher elevations. As their carriage crested the rise overlooking the valley, Katherine gasped in surprise. A new house stood on her property, not as large as the main ranch house but substantial, with a wide porch and smoke curling from the chimney. Nearby, a new barn gleamed red in the afternoon sun. "Welcome home, Mrs. O'Connor," Nathan said softly, watching her face. "You built this while we were away." Katherine turned to him in amazement. "I had it planned before we left. The men worked double shifts to have it ready." He took her hand. "I know how much your independence means to you. This land was yours before me, will be yours always, but I thought we might make it our special place, somewhere apart from the main ranch operations. Somewhere just for us." Tears filled Katherine's eyes. "It's perfect," she whispered, "absolutely perfect." That evening, as they sat before the fire in their new home, Katherine marveled at the journey that had brought them here. From a desperate widow taking in a stranger during a blizzard to the wife of one of the territory's most prosperous ranchers, yet underneath the external changes, the core truth remained. They had found in each other not just love but partnership in its truest sense. "What are you thinking?" Nathan asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. Katherine smiled, leaning against his shoulder. "That sometimes salvation comes in unexpected forms. For me, it was a stubborn cowboy in a snowstorm." "And for me, it was a proud widow with a shotgun," he replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Who wouldn't take charity but offered shelter to a stranger." Outside, the first real snowfall of winter began, soft flakes drifting past the windows. Inside, the fire crackled warmly, illuminating the beginning of their shared life, a life built on respect, partnership, and a love strong enough to weather whatever storms the frontier might bring.